Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound podcast, a show where, as always, we're hitting you with them elbows of knowledge. And this week, we've got UFC 319, Dricus du Plessis defending his middleweight title against Khamzat Chimaev. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Carlos. What's happening, Carlos?
Absolutely nothing, brother.
An absolute stacked pay-per-view card at United Center is going to be broken down here on the Ground and Pound podcast, kicking things off in the early prelims, heading to the main event. The main event is an absolute banger. We're not going to waste any time. Let's get right into the early prelim opener of Joseph Morales taking on Alibi Idiris. I'm pretty sure I'm butchering that Kazakhstani name. But Carlos, who you got in the Ultimate Fighter finale to kick things off in this Ground and Pound evening?
Well, I'm going to go with, I'm going to keep it easy and go with, I went with Morales. Sorry, I just saw that. I just feel at this point that he knows how to mix in his skills a little bit better. I like Alibi. I think he's a very good fighter, and I think he's got some side to him as well in the future. I just think Morales knows how to go from striking to grappling to, wrestling to, he knows how to mix everything. I did see that when he was around 23, he fought Davidson Figueiredo. Obviously just showed some toughness until, the fight was over in the second round. Figueiredo got him out of there. But to be that young, going in there against a guy who's going to be a future champ, I thought that was a good showing of himself at that time. And he's only gotten better since, you know what I mean? A lot of his fights he's go to afterward. And I just think that, Alibi, he could be a bit unpredictable. He's got some flying knees that he likes to throw out of nowhere, elbows, back elbows. He likes to, just after he throws a knee, shoot for a takedown. I just think that Morales fights a little bit cleaner on the feet. And I think that on the ground, they're obviously both good wrestlers, obviously both well-versed. I think Morales probably has the edge. I'm just going to say because he trains at, I'm sure that going through wrestling and submissions. And I got Morales. I do like Alibi. I think he's a very good fighter. He can pull this off too, but I think I'm going to stick with Morales.
Dissension to kick things off on the card, man. I'm going with Alibi here. Ultimate Fighter finale style. I think he gets his hand raised here. I like his heavy forward pressure style. I think he's got fantastic kicks from the outside. He can fight going forward. He can fight on the back foot. And he does a fantastic job of mixing in some awkward attacks, like you said. And he has a very nice spinning wheel kick, a very nice spinning back kick as well. You watch the Ultimate Fighter this season. He's thrown many of those. Very fast hands, nice entries on his takedowns to implement his wrestling. And he is relentless with the wrestling too. It's one of these fighters that, if he doesn't get the first takedown, he won't stop at one. He will mix in multiple takedowns throughout the fight. Once he does get on top, he has good top pressure, very, very good at staying in dominant positions. He will throw ground and pound to soften you up as well as look for submissions in that process. And to me, he looks like the real deal. I was very impressed with him when I'm doing tape study this week. And to me, when you look at Morales, obviously he fought, like Carlos said, back in 2018, 3 years ago, coming off that 3-year layoff. He then went and fought in Cage Warriors. He fought in Uriah Faber's A1 Combat. Trains at Team Alpha Male, so obviously he should be fairly credentialed in the wrestling. But to me, when I watch him, the level of competition that he's fought outside of the UFC hasn't really told me too much about him in the way that I would like to think that a guy here like Alibi is going to basically just cause him a lot of problems. He's not fought anybody on that level. And when he was in the UFC, like Carlos said, against Davidson Figueiredo, he struggled. I think that he can mix in the wrestling in this matchup. I do think that Alibi is probably the better wrestler out of the two. And I just think that he's going to be outclassed everywhere else, especially in the striking. If Morales can kind of come forward and maybe implement, forward pressure, it might cause Alibi a little bit of problems. But I think Alibi plants his feet in the middle of the octagon. I think he walks forward, heavy pressure. He just basically takes his fight to the ground if he wants, or he fights on the outside and uses his kick. So give me Alibi here. Dissension on the Ground and Pound podcast to kick things off early. That's what we like here. And next up, we have Dione Barbosa taking on Karine Silva. Carlos, who you got in this one?
think we might have a little bit more dissension. I still don't know who you picked, but I went with Dione Barboza, and the reason being is Karine Silva. Yes, she has good jiu-jitsu, and I think she's very heavy-handed in her striking as well. If you stand in front of her, I don't see Dione Barboza standing in front of her, letting Barboza does move a lot. She's light on her feet. Silva does like to stalk, and one of the things that she does is that she loves the fact that she can hurt women with her hands, or hurt them and then get them to the ground. That sometimes she's very low volume. Also, what she should have learned from her last fight, because that's what got her in some trouble, and she ended up losing to Araujo. And I feel that Barboza likes to stay a little bit busier. She has a lot of in and out. She stays moving. She's built like a little pit bull too, and she's a was it former Olympic judoka who's she's got great grappling. She's a black belt in judo and BJJ. Like, this should be her fight to take. I believe Silva would be the favorite in this one. I think
Silva is the favorite in this one. Yeah, Silva is the favorite in this one. Yeah, the odds are a little bit funny on this one though, because I do agree with everything that you said about Barbosa. She is very, very talented, but I think the odds are a reflection here of her taking this fight on somewhat short notice. This is actually a rematch as well. If you go back and look on earlier in both of these women's careers, Silva was able to basically take this fight. I think she only had a couple of fights in her career at this point. I think Dione Barbosa was like 2-0 at the time. Barbosa got the unanimous decision victory over Silva here. And when we talk about both women, I think both women are very, very skilled. And I think maybe Barbosa's taking this fight thinking, she can basically replicate what she did earlier on in her career. But Silva moved over to Fighting Nerds since then. Whether you want to look into that gym having so much success that she might come out and look a little bit better, I do think that that's a possibility here. Coming off her loss against Viviana Araujo, I think that you learn a lot more from a loss than you do, obviously, a victory. And up until that point, she'd been putting a lot of women out at 125, which we don't see a lot of at 125, especially in the women's division. She's a natural finisher. Most of her wins do come via finish. And she was able to go to the distance in one of her previous victories as well. So I think maybe that move over to Fighting Nerds might do her some good, just to tweak a few things. She likes to pressure forward, Silva. She likes to get in women's faces. And sometimes she can kind of be a little bit wild. She does tend to throw things a little bit too hard, which might lead to her, kind of gassing out. But I think in this matchup here, I think that she can implement really just whatever she wants in terms of the striking. I think if she goes to the ground with Barbosa, I do think that she can survive there. I think if the fight plays out on the feet, I think Silva's going to have the advantage. And especially on short notice here, I don't necessarily trust any grappling or heavy grappling that comes from Barbosa. Obviously, like Carlos said, she was a part of the Brazilian judo national team, black belt in both judo and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. She got an opportunity to work on her striking in her previous fight against, I want to say it's Dione I forget the woman's name, but took her down whenever she wanted to after she tested out her striking and was able to get the choke there. But I just don't see that being a path to victory here against Silva. I think she stuffs the takedowns. I think she implements her striking here. I think Karine Silva gets the victory and gets some revenge here for the first fight amongst these two women. And like you said, dissension here again on the Ground and Pound podcast.
Ooh.
Speaking of booze, Bryan battle taking on Nursulton Ruziboev. Keep booing me, baby. He goes, it only makes me stronger, or whatever it is that he said. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I went with Bryan battle in this one. Ruziboev has many physical advantages in this. He's light on his feet, strikes at range. He can grapple. He's good at submissions. Battle is very well versed in everything as well. I just feel that the movement of Ruziboev could pose problems, but Battle does have a little bit of a stalking motion, and as he's coming at you with that style. And one of the things that happened in the last fight that I wasn't too happy about with Battle, maybe he was a little shy of the power coming back at him, but he didn't come forward and knew it was because he got stung. It wasn't that big of a shot, but he did get stung. And I don't know if Ruziboev could actually do that to him, because he does land a lot of strikes, but like I said, he lands a lot of strikes before someone's hurt. He doesn't just get you out of there. And I think Battle can tough through that, get him up against the cage, you know, throw some knees, throw some elbows, get him down if he wants to. But I feel like Battle's going to want to stay on the feet. Now, if he does that, I think it's obviously a horrible idea because Ruziboev's not going to stay in one spot and let this guy hit him. But I feel that if he can clinch him and get some takedowns, at least look effective, I think Battle is a little grittier, a little bit more physical than Ruziboev likes to be. Whether he cuts a lot of weight at 6'6" to make this weight class, I don't know. But I just feel that Battle's just going to be, we talked about it before. That mentality has changed since he went from Pooh Bear to the Butcher Battle. And he's a little tougher. He's a little meaner. And I think he's going to bring that in this affair. He's going to, I think he's going to just best Ruziboev. It's a tough one. I went back and forth in this one, but I'm going to go with Battle.
I don't think on any show we've ever done, we have gone completely opposite picks for 3 straight fights. And we're going to do it here because I'm going with Nursulton Ruziboev. I don't like Bryan Battle at 185. I got to admit, I think at welterweight's where he's going to have more success. I think he's a little bit undersized, especially in this matchup against a big Nursulton Ruziboev. And when you look at previous performances with Bryan Battle, he struggled a little bit against Randy Brown. I don't even think that he won that fight. He did get the split decision victory, but he, like Carlos said, he got stung in that fight early, tasted the power of Randy Brown. And realistically, he just held him up against the fence, and the judges, decided to give him that victory. And I was a big fan of Bryan Battle, especially after the victory that he got against Kevin Jousset over in France. He did look good in that fight, especially with the hands, especially with the boxing. But Kevin Jousset is not on the level of a guy like Nursulton Ruziboev. I think that Battle here is going to come in and, like Carlos said, he's going to try and implement the striking. But I think Ruziboev has a very nice counter right hand. We saw that against Bruno Ferreira, that he was able to time a nice right hand straight down the pipe. He's bigger. He's not going to have the reach advantage. But if this fight ends up against the fence, I think that Ruziboev is going to be the much bigger, physically stronger fighter here. He can mix in his own grappling. And when you talk about Ruziboev's previous fight against Dustin Stoltzfus, some people would point to that and say that's not a good performance because Dustin Stoltzfus isn't all that. But I think Dustin Stoltzfus is a little bit underrated. I think people give him a hard time. He's a great athlete, good wrestling, got power in the hands. He's definitely a dangerous fighter. And Ruziboev was able to survive, a guillotine in that fight, showed some toughness. And I also think here that at middleweight, he's definitely a lot better than he is at 170. If this fight was at 170, I'd be picking Bryan Battle. But I think the fact that Ruziboev is going to be bigger, stronger, and also more comfortable here at 185, whereas I think Bryan Battle's going to be a little bit more undersized. Give me Ruziboev here to get this one done. I think it's probably going to go to the judges' scorecards, but I just like Ruziboev's size here. I don't think Battle's going to be able to hold him up against the fence like he did against Randy Brown, and I think he's going to carry the power advantage here. 3 for 3 fights with Dissension on the Ground and Pound podcast. Let's see if we join this one. Let's see if we come together on this one. We got Edson Barbosa taking on Drakkar Klose. Carlos, who you got in this one?
This one, we actually might on this one, okay? And you'll hear my reasoning for that. I'm going with Barboza in this one. I do think that Barboza has got a little bit more, and it's weird to say Barboza has dog in him because when he starts flowing and he starts ripping those kicks and punches, he's dangerous, but taking punishment is not one of his best qualities. I do think, though, in this fight, he has a little bit more dog in him. Klose, only because, as we've discussed about Klose, he doesn't seem to want any difficult matchups anymore. So if things start to get a little difficult, he's probably going to try to find a comfortable spot on the mat, maybe to take a little nap. Who knows? But I just feel that, I think if Klose could actually have a lot of success if he mixes takedowns with strikes, but that's also not his game either. And against somebody like Barboza, who's just going to brutalize your feet, he's going to rip the legs, he's going to rip to the body. Against someone who I mentally think isn't there anymore, I'm going to give the edge to Barboza. So I'm going with Edson. Hopefully he gets one of those spinning wheel kicks, turns him to stone, but those are rare. They don't happen all the time.
Yeah, I'm going with Barbosa too. We're going to join on this one for sure. I've not been a big fan of Drakkar Klose in his career. I think that he's a little bit I don't want to say weak-minded, but you kind of touched a little bit upon, when he faces some adversity, he kind of folds, and that's definitely how I see here. I think if Edson Barbosa's got a little bit of fight left in him, which he seems to have showed in his previous fights, even against Lerone Murphy, he showed that he can hang in there, he can take a punch, he can give one to get one. When you talk about the Yusuf fight, he got dropped. He got almost finished in that one, came back, was able to win that fight and show a lot of toughness and a lot of heart. And to me, if you're, an MMA fan and you've not necessarily been around the sport for too long and you've never seen an Edson Barbosa fight, go back and look at some of his highlights. Like Carlos said, the spinning wheel kicks, some of the nastiest you've seen in the sport. That's going to be pretty much all over his highlight reel tape is some of the, the flashiest spinning kicks that you'll ever see. I think Drakkar Klose could definitely come in here and mix in some takedowns, but Edson Barbosa's been, difficult throughout his career to really hold down and keep down. Klose not necessarily known for a crazy amount of high-pressure wrestling. I just look at this fight and think to myself, the longer this fight goes, the more Barbosa's probably going to land something big that's going to kind of make Drakkar Klose question whether he really wants to be in there. And really, to me, Drakkar Klose is a guy that this is a step up in competition for him, in my opinion. When he fought against Joel Alvarez in his last fight, he got dog-walked. No shame in that. Alvarez is a great fighter. He comes forward, heavy pressure style, but that fits into that narrative that when someone comes at him, kind of walks him down, brings the pressure to him, brings the fight to him, he seems to struggle. And I think that Barbosa needs to do that. I think he needs to be on the front foot here. I do agree with Carlos as well. I do think that Barbosa's kind of chin might be failing him a little bit. He is getting tagged a lot in previous fights. Maybe the writing is on the wall for the 39-year-old UFC, probably Hall of Famer here, but give me Edson Barbosa here. I like the striking. And I think the old dog still got some tricks enough to beat a guy like Drakkar Klose for sure. And next up, we have Alexander Hernandez taking on Chase Hooper. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I'm going with Chase Hooper, man. Alexander Hernandez has started off his career ablaze because he knocked out, oh my goodness, what's that guy's name again? And we're going to go through this one more time.
Beneil Dariush.
Anyway, Beneil Dariush, that's who it is. Anyway, he knocked him out, and then that, brought a bunch of accolades toward him, and they wanted to see where he would go. He's fought in the UFC for a while, and not upgraded his game at all. Striking is pretty much the same, loves to be wrestle heavy, and doesn't really add submissions. And I'm thinking if you're someone that likes to wrestle a lot or grapple, like you should be for submission to make your life easier, possibly to end the night earlier. But he hasn't tried to do that. And with the striking, he doesn't move his head. He moves his legs, but back and forward, doesn't change angles. His punches are straight, but his head's in the same spot. And Chase Hooper, his stand-up has gotten better. He hits heavier than people think because once they start to accumulate, he is hurting guys. The pace that he puts on you with the volume of the punch, the heaviness of the punch, and the grappling, Hernandez is not going to be able to survive. So I'm going with Chase Hooper. Easy pick for me.
Yeah, I don't feel as confident as you probably do, but I'm going to go with Chase Hooper here. When you look at previous fights here for Alex Hernandez, a split decision victory over Austin Hubbard doesn't necessarily do anything for me. Kurt Hollaber, obviously a very gritty, tough fighter. He lost that third round. That arguably, I know some people thought that Kurt Hollaber might have won that fight. I think that well-timed takedown at the end of the third round for Alexander Hernandez might have sealed the deal for him. But to me, this fight really just comes down to how easily can Chase Hooper implement his wrestling and implement his grappling. Obviously, like Carlos said, Chase Hooper's striking's definitely improved over the course of his career. He's somebody that he's kind of grown and developed in front of our own eyes. When you saw him come in, you kind of worried about him taking shots from some bigger fighters, but he's kind of the boy has become the man now. He's the bigger guy. He's walking people down. He's implementing his grappling. He's taking people's backs. He's ragdolling them around. And I wouldn't be surprised if he does that to a guy like Alexander Hernandez. I almost said Anthony Hernandez. I'm having flashbacks to last week's Dog of the Week. But I just think here that Chase... I just think that Chase Hooper is just going to be able to implement that grappling. And like Carlos said, I think his striking is probably a little bit underrated at this point, providing that Hernandez doesn't kind of land that Beneil Dariush right hand or land on the chin of Hooper here. I think that the longer this fight goes, the more that he's going to have to defend takedowns. There's going to be a scramble. I think Hooper maybe takes his back, rides out rounds, or finds a late submission here. But I'm not as confident as Carlos, but I do think that Chase Hooper is definitely got all the skills to beat a guy who's inconsistent like Hernandez is. And we have to also talk about as well with Hernandez that, in the previous fights that he's had, he has gassed out in times. He has slowed down in fights with a, grappling heavy game plan of Chase Hooper. He might not be able to last the full 3 rounds with his cardio if Chase decides to come in here and grapple heavy. So the youth, Chase Hooper, let's get it done, baby.
Let me ask you a question, man. If this fight stayed just a striking match, who do you think wins? Hooper or Hernandez?
I think it would be much closer, but I would probably say Chase Hooper, but very close. It just depends. I give the power edge
That's
to
very
Hernandez.
interesting. You'd give the power edge to Hernandez? Okay, all right.
Yeah. I think Hooper can crack, but I think that Hernandez at times, I don't know. It's a tough one. I just think it's like 50-50. I just think the fact that there's grappling involved, I think that Chase Hooper would win. If it's just striking, it's a coin flip to me. I'm not necessarily sold on Hooper's durability or his striking yet. That's all it is.
All right.
And next up, we have Lupita Godinez taking on Jessica Andrade. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I should go with Andrade because this is I think this is at 115. Am I correct or no? Because I see you have 125 here.
It is 115. You're correct. Yeah, that's a typo on my bad.
Okay. And Andrade is kind of a monster at 115. But Lupi's a lot more technical than Andrade. So I feel defensively she's got to be on the ball, and she's got to be able to keep a high guard and keep her legs change. I don't know what's going on with Andrade, but she has been going up against good fighters, so I can't say I don't know what's going on, but she's been taken down pretty easily by people you wouldn't expect sometimes. And Godinez does have wrestling. And I'm thinking maybe what she's going to do is try to defend some of these strikes on the inside, probably tie her up, and, try to implement some wrestling, try to get her down, try to throw some short shots and fight from the outside. Now, she doesn't have a reach advantage, I don't believe, in this fight. But what I do know is I think there might be a decline with Andrade. Sure, maybe it was just at 125, but at 115, she was an animal. Can she be that animal again? Possibly. I'm going to go with Godinez. I think she's got it. I think she's a little bit more technically sound, and I think that's what it'll take to nullify the power on Andrade. And if you nullify the power on Andrade, I think she forgets she knows how to wrestle because she doesn't really. So I think that's something that Godinez can actually exploit and open up, and that'll create some openings on Andrade. So I'm going Godinez. Let's go, Lupi.
Yeah, I'm happy that I can hear the almost the indecisiveness on this fight, because I kind of tossed and turned with this one a little bit too. And Jessica Andrade, like you said, does carry a lot of power in the hands, and at any moment she can catch anybody and put somebody out. But even when we saw the last fight that Lupita Godinez had against Julia Pelostri, that Pelostri in that 3rd round was walking her down. She was tagging her. She was kind of, having to face some adversity that Godinez was able to win the first 2 rounds comfortably. But my concern here is more the first round. If Andrade, kind of lands something big early, then Godinez might be in a world of trouble. But I agree with you that I think that Jessica Andrade's decline has kind of been very noticeable. In her previous 2 losses, obviously she went against Jasmine Jazz Tavicius, a ground and pound favorite here on the channel, and she was able to get taken, down and pretty much submitted at will. So I don't necessarily think that happens here. I think Godinez will be able to get the takedowns early and often. I think that wears on the gas tank of Andrade, and I think that she's going to be able to win a decision victory here with the wrestling. I think the takedowns will come much easier in the 2nd and 3rd round after Andrade kind of has her gas tank, and her power kind of sapped from the wrestling. But it's tough because, like Carlos said earlier, at 115, I didn't realize the fight was at 115. Andrade is definitely a more physically dominant fighter against at the smaller weight class here. And she's definitely, back against the wall in terms of her career as well, on a 2-fight losing streak. Obviously, Godinez coming off a victory doesn't necessarily feel that same pressure. So I wouldn't be surprised if Andrade does catch somebody or catch Godinez this weekend. But I'm going to say that Godinez is able to get the wrestling going, use the takedowns and just kind of stay safe. And people talked about in her previous fight against Pelostri that, or she said that she needed to go to the bathroom, she needed to take a shit in the third round or something. That's why she had a slow third round. But fighters will say anything for a poor performance or that just sounds like some bullshit if you ask me, not real shit. But I wouldn't be surprised if Andrade, finds the chin here. But give me Godinez here to implement the wrestling. Not confident.
That sounds like someone that's never been hit in the bladder during saying that. Sounds like bullshit. Because getting hit and not peeing yourself during a fight, that sucks. So I'm just letting you know that.
We'll test it out one day. We'll record it for the channel, I think. After maybe a tough case of Taco Bell or something. But next up, we have Gerald Meerschaert taking on Michal Oleksiejczuk. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who you got in this one?
I hate having to break this down because this should be an easy one. I'm going to go with Oleksiejczuk, but Meerschaert and that stupid mustache, I just hope he knocks it off his face. Meerschaert just finds a way to stay live in the fight so he can implement his snuggling and look for the submission. And sometimes he finds it and sometimes he. So I just hope this is a quick KO by Oleksiejczuk. He's nastier. He's a little meaner. He wants to end the fight. I'm going with Oleksiejczuk. That's all Meerschaert, I don't even know how he just ends up surviving in these fights. Like sometimes he gets brutally KO'd and then takes a couple shots and then he starts snuggling you to the ground. And so Oleksiejczuk to get it done.
Yeah, this fight really just comes down to me. It's going to be Gerald Meerschaert by submission, second round, or it's going to be first round knockout for Oleksiejczuk. And obviously, there's no secret on both of these guys, what their deficiencies are. Striker grappler matchup here. One guy's got a deficiency and the other guy's strength. So either way, I don't see this fight going the distance. Oleksiejczuk, getting that first round knockout against Cedric Dumas. And he talked about obviously moving over to the fighting nerds. That's been a theme on a few of the fights on this card. People moving over to fighting nerds, this, etc., etc. But Oleksiejczuk, very, very aggressive. He gets it done inside the first round. Power in the hands, nice kickboxing, but he can't defend a takedown. He usually gets submitted. 6 of his losses have all come via submission. And Gerald Meerschaert obviously is a fantastic jiu-jitsu, practitioner. I don't want to say he's, one of the higher level guys inside the UFC, but like Carlos said, he does weather a storm. He is able to come back and he does end up finding submissions late in the second or third round. So I wouldn't be surprised if Gerald Meerschaert here survives the first round or he's able to get a takedown here and find the submission. But I'm going to say the move over to fighting nerds does Oleksiejczuk well. He wins 2 back-to-back fights, getting the first round knockout here. But don't be surprised if Meerschaert pulls off the upset here with the submission. But I'm going to go with Oleksiejczuk to get this one done with the hands. And I'm right there with you. You need to trim that mustache. And next up, we have the battle of the old uns. We got Diego Ferreira taking on King Green. Only one will be standing in this one. I don't think this one goes the distance. But Carlos, who you got in this one?
I went with Diego Ferreira. I like Bobby Green. I think he's good, but when you fight with your hands by your side, it doesn't help you when the guy advances and he can crack too. And when he cracks you and jumps on your back for submission, or he cracks you and he puts you out, I can just see that happening when Ferreira pressures, and he throws maybe 1 or 1-2. Green can move out of the way, but if he throws 3 punches, follows them out of the pocket, he never brings his hands up. He just pivots with his chin up in the air and he gets cracked. And as much as I like Bobby Green, he's very entertaining. I'm going to go with Ferreira to win.
Yeah, 2 for Ferreira here. I don't necessarily trust Bobby King Green, whatever you want to call him. I think he's more focused on changing his name than he is changing his fighting style. But like Carlos said, King Green with his hands low, he's always, liable to be tagged. Coming off that KO loss to Rufi as well. And Ferreira hits hard, man, even though, he's had some lackluster performances recently. Obviously that loss that he had against Grant Dawson where he was out-wrestled. he's a guy who, he's got wins and even against Rombetsky, for example, he was able to kind of outlast Rombetsky, who's a tough guy. Even Michael Johnson, he was able to kind of, weather a storm and be able to land a big shot. I think the power in Ferreira's hands is going to be enough to fight a guy like Bobby Green. I think that Bobby Green's going to be winning this fight until he isn't. I think the power is on the side of Ferreira if he wants to be able to land and kind of pressure forward in a disrespectful manner against a guy like King Green. He definitely can. And if he wants to mix in takedowns, I wouldn't blame him here either. We've seen with Bobby Green before that, he can be taken down, obviously against much higher level grapplers, but I do think that's a path to victory here. Ferreira wants to win this one. He can mix in some grappling, and I do think the power's on his side. The only way I see King Green winning this one realistically is fighting on the outside, dancing around on the outside, popping him with the jab, and kind of making this one a boring kind of, 3-round fighting on the outside, just pitter-patter, style matchup. I don't think he does that. I think he wants to get in here, have exciting fights, kind of talk his shit, really just trade in the pocket. And I don't think that's a good way for him to get a victory against a guy who still cracks, even at the age of 40, and a guy like Ferreira. So give me Ferreira here. I think he finds a knockout as well. And next up, we have Tim Elliott taking on Kai Asakura. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I went with Asakura in this. Tim Elliott is, he's getting up there in age, and the pace that he likes to keep in the fight, it's really tough. You can actually see that his feet have slowed down just a tad, and he still has his movement, still keeps his wrestling going, heavy on the ground. But I just feel that if Asakura can fend off just a couple of these takedowns, he doesn't have to worry so much about the striking element coming back at him. But I think if he can stuff a couple takedowns, get some distance, and throw some strikes back, they're sharp, they're pretty accurate, and I don't really see this fight going the distance. I think he can hurt Elliott. I don't see it going the distance. I like Tim Elliott too. Guy, gritty, ready to get in there and mix it up. But you're going to be in a constant scramble with someone like Elliott, and I just don't do it for the 3 rounds. And I think he'll start to fade a little bit in the second, and in the third he might be ripe for the picking. So I'm gonna go with Asakura with this one. I don't feel confident in this because at any point Elliott can just turn this around, control Asakura, or just keep taking him down, making him have to get back. I'm gonna go with Asakura. I think he's gonna find a shot to the body, shot to the chin, something, and I think he's gonna hurt Elliott and maybe not put him away, but definitely get the decision. It's gonna go his way.
Yeah, I feel fairly confident here in Asakura as well, and I'm happy that you brought up the body work. I think Kai Asakura is going to, basically find a finish here to the body of somewhere along the line here against Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott, known as a gritty wrestler, but you got to say at 38 years old, coming off a year and 7-month layoff, that's not really what I like to see. Couldn't find the reason for that. I don't know if it's because he couldn't get a fight or if it's because he was injured. But if it is an injury, this is a tough matchup for him to step back in against a guy like Kai Asakura. He's got fantastic, very, very fast hands, nice kicks, and he has a well-timed knee to the body, which I could definitely see it hurting Elliott here, especially if he tries to mix in some grappling. And a lot of people are looking at this matchup. I know people are talking about, Asakura got taken down and out, kind of fraud checked against Pantoja with the grappling. But first of all, Pantoja is an absolute dog. He's arguably one of the best fighters so far in the UFC at this point, in this current moment. I'm not sure what he is in the pound-for-pound rankings, but, the guy can strike, the guy can grapple. And even when Carlos pointed it out earlier, Pantoja has the threat of the striking that Asakura has to watch for. That's why it opens up the takedowns. Elliott, there's not as much power coming back on the with the hands. I don't think Asakura is going to have to worry too much about the striking of Elliott, which is going to help him really implement his striking as well. I think he defends the takedowns here, finds a shot to the body, and gets the finish here. Give me Asakura, confident pick this week to get it done here against the long layoff Tim Elliott. And next up, I'm excited for this one. Jared Cannonier taking on Michael Venom Page. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I was gonna be a hater and say, why are you excited for this one? I like watching Jared Cannonier too. I think he's great, but I think Michael Page is gonna post the same problems with Cannonier even more so because Cannonier is not really a mover. He's not very fleet of foot. And I think he's going to make this for 3 rounds back and forth, like just jumping in and out of the pocket, pop shotting and getting out of there. And, there's one way there's a couple of ways, 2 ways for Cannonier to get through. Is time him as he's coming in and rip the lead leg. And as you're ripping the lead leg, you just got to remember coming with a shot as well. So it's going to depend on which shot gets there first, So that's one thing. The second thing is you're going to have to kind of jab your way in, rush him, and get him up against the cage and try to get him to the ground. And to be honest with you, I don't know if Cannonier can actually do that round after round. And he may have success in the first, but then the second round is going to come, and I don't think he's going to have that same success. I don't think that Page actually hits just as hard as he does at 170, at 185. But I think with that movement, he still has that in and out. He's still pretty quick. And compared to Cannonier, he's like the Flash. And I don't see Cannonier being able to corner him, cut off the ring very easy because he doesn't do that in any of his fights. So I'm going with Michael Venom Page in this one.
Yeah, 2 for MVP here. I like Michael Venom Page in this matchup, although I am a good, pretty solid favorite of Cannonier, even though he was able to prove me wrong in that last fight against RoboCop. His comeback victory where he was able to get the 4th round knockout was pretty impressive, even at the age of 41. The guy's a very, physically dominant fighter, very physical specimen, to say the least. You could just tell from, the picture that's on your screen there. But I think if he doesn't come in here and wrestle, he's going to be screwed. Michael Venom Page has got such an awkward style, obviously bouncing in and out, that point style, karate style. It's tough, it's a tough style to deal with. I think if Cannonier can sort of use his footwork to kind of corral, Michael Venom Page up against the fence and shoot him for takedowns, that's going to be the only way he's going to win. Other than that, I think he's going to be swinging at air. I think that Cannonier, obviously with the 5-round experience, that, a 3-round fight, he can, push a pace and definitely come out aggressive early. But I just think, like I said, he's going to be swinging the air against a guy like Michael Venom Page. I think that the speed's going to be far too much, and I just think the MVP is just going to put on a typical MVP performance here, dancing around on the outside, kind of with the antics as well. He'll time some shots, kind of to crash into the pocket here against Cannonier. And we've seen with Cannonier that he's been rocked in multiple fights now. In the Imavov fight, he got cracked in that one. When you talk about the Gregory Rodriguez fight, he got hurt badly early in that one. And even in the Marvin Vettori victory, he got cracked early. So I wouldn't be surprised here if the chin is kind of fading him here at 41. And we know that Michael Venom Page can definitely catch people's chin with his speed. So I like MVP to get it done in a big way this week. And next up, we have Geoff Neal taking on Carlos Prates. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I got Carlos Prates in this one. Reason being, Neal allows himself to get hit. As the fight goes on, he'll lower his stance. He'll start moving his head just a little bit. But as it turns into more of a firefight, he tends to forget that he has to move his head, and he just focuses on, can I land my big left hand on? And I think that's the first problem that's going to lead to him getting probably knocked out in this fight. But the other thing too is, Prates has got the range on, so he's going to be hitting him with left hooks when Neal's trying to hit him with right hooks. Neal's trying with straight. So that's going to be another issue that he's going to have to get through. So it would be great if Neal would start attacking Prates' leg to be able to get in, implement some movement, because as we've seen with some movement, Prates doesn't really know keep you in one spot. One of the things that Prates does that I'm not a fan of in this fight is sometimes to avoid straight punches against a conventional fighter, he likes to pivot out of the way, kind of take it on his shoulder as he exits the pocket. If you do that against Neal, who's a southpaw as well, that's a terrible angle. So, I know the fighting nerds have probably thought about that, and they worked on the right way to get out of the pocket. That's just something to keep in mind, is that you're going up against another southpaw. The way you turn to get out of the pocket against you're going to be in a world of hurt if you turn the wrong way against Geoff Neal. I think Prates is going to get this. I don't want to say easy work, but I feel like it's going to be almost a flawless victory, because I feel that Geoff Neal doesn't really move his head, doesn't move his feet. When he gets into a firefight, he starts getting into exchange. He'll stand in one spot and just come after you. And the most he does is he'll step back and bounce and then step forward again. So that, very low level scheme for Neal. So I'm going Prates.
Yeah, 2 for Prates here. I feel like this is a showcase bout for him against a name that they can get him back in the win column after that loss against Ian Gary. And to me, Carlos is right, man. Geoff Neal's, defensively, he just kind of just walks forward. And to me, I just think against a guy like Prates, he's going to get caught. And to me, Neal likes to throw and trade leather and hope that he lands something. He is a technical kickboxer. He does have power. But I just think, to me, this is just going to come down to at what moment does Prates crack him with something where he goes, oh, shit, I can't just walk this guy down. Prates, obviously, a little bit bigger, a little bit more of a reach advantage in this matchup. I think he trains at the better gym over there with Fighting Nerds, like Carlos said. And to me, when you look at Geoff Neal, you know that he's not going to implement any wrestling. And that's something that we saw with Ian Gary, that he was willing to shoot him for takedowns. And that's something that, Carlos Prates has to think about. He has to think about defending those takedowns. And at times, he'd bring his hands down to defend those takedowns and then get caught with a shot. Whereas we know with Neal, he's not going to implement any grappling. It's going to be a back and forth striking affair. I think that suits a guy like Carlos Prates. And I think the UFC knows what they're doing here, giving a name of a guy that's not going to come in and grapple. He's going to want to stand and trade, and I think that Prates does a great job of even stepping in with knees to the body as well, which we saw in his fight against Chuck Buffalo. And I think Prates gets this one done most likely by a knockout or a bloody beatdown for 3 rounds here. Either way, I see Prates getting his hand raised, so I like him to get it done in a big way this week.
What a great nickname, Chuck Buffalo. I like that one.
It's not bad, right? Blood, brother, pride. And in the co-main event, we have Lerone, the Miracle Murphy, taking on Aaron Pico. And as always, if you're enjoying the content here on the Ground and Pound podcast, hit that like and subscribe button as Carlos lets you know who he's got in the main event, in the co-main event, excuse me.
I love the streak that Lerone Murphy has been on, and he's a killer. Unfortunately, what I'm doing is I'm going with Aaron Pico. All right, the kid has got every aspect of fighting that you can have, and in the last 5 years he's been putting it together. Like his last real loss was probably 5 years ago, I think. Borix, right? And after that, he lost to Jeremy Kent. That's when his shoulder dislocated in the first, and I just feel that his fights, it's been lower level guys. He hasn't been fighting guys the caliber of Lerone Murphy. And I do feel that he's going to have the wrestling advantage in that. I think he's going to take down Murphy whenever he wants to. And I think that Murphy can get back up. I also think that Murphy can probably stuff. But I feel that if Pico really wants him down, he's going to get him down. And I think he'll be better off going with a wrestle first, strike second approach, because when he strikes first against someone like Murphy, I think Murphy's more of a natural striker than Aaron Pico, meaning strategically he knows what he wants to do to set up shots. Aaron Pico, I think, is the harder hitter on the feet. I think in combination, they're beautiful combinations. You could see the stretch in my shoulder as he whips it back. It looks perfect, those hooks, but he does leave himself open. So he needs the threat of the takedown to be able to set up his strikes better. He doesn't really mix in a lot of kicks. He does here and there, but I do like Pico in this matchup. If he wrestles first, strikes second, I think that's the recipe for the win right here. And Lerone Murphy, is a very technical fighter. I think he's good. I think this is so close of a matchup. I'm trying to look for something to go with Pico here. I could easily take Murphy, but I'm going with Pico. I'm not going to change my mind. I think he's going to land a lot to the body. I think he's going to catch Murphy with shots on the way back up, and I think this is going to go the distance. But yeah, going Pico.
Al Michaels once said on a sports broadcast for a hockey game It basically goes something like this. Do you believe in miracles? Carlos, do you believe in miracles? Because if you're betting dog of the week this week, Lerone Murphy, dog of the week. Lerone, the miracle Murphy. He's getting it done here for the dog of the week, man. I got to go with him. And I think he's going to get it done against Aaron Pico. And when we talk about these Bellator guys and these guys coming from these other, big names, Patchy Mix, what's his name? Michael Chandler, all these guys that come over from Bellator, they don't have success over in the UFC. They don't tend to, perform at the level that they should. Aaron Pico's obviously not fought in some time. His previous fight against Henry Corrales, he took that fight on short notice. Henry Corrales, don't get me wrong, he was able to get the victory inside the first round with ground and pound. But, even his second fight against Pedro Carvalho, he doesn't hold a jockstrap to a guy like Lerone Murphy. When you're talking about these victories that he's got, even when you go back later on in his career, they're not necessarily anywhere near the skill level of a guy 16-0 against a guy like Lerone Murphy. Lerone Murphy 8-0 inside the UFC. He put up a great performance in his previous fight against Josh Emmett, a guy that's got a lot of power. He had to worry about the power coming back at him, and he fights a smart game plan to get the victory. I know that Lerone Murphy's hungry for a title shot. I think that if he gets this win and he wins this fight, kind of in a dramatic fashion, I think that he'll be the next guy to, step up for a title shot. And I think that he knows that. 34 years old, he knows that the time is of the essence. And the guy is, training at a Manchester top team. They're on a big rise at the moment, especially for the UK gyms. The guy's got great footwork. You saw against Edson Barbosa that he did everything that he needed to stand and trade with a guy like Edson Barbosa. He mixed in his own wrestling. And I think the thing here with Pico is that when you watch a lot of his fights, he likes to implement his wrestling. I think that Lerone Murphy's going to have good footwork, not get corralled up against the fence, and those takedowns aren't going to come. And when it comes to the striking, I think Lerone Murphy's going to pot shot a guy like Pico. I think the moment's going to be too big for a guy like Pico. And I don't trust some of these Bellator guys coming over here in the big stage against a guy who's 16-0 inside the 8-0 inside the UFC, 16-0 in his career, undefeated. Give me Lerone, the Miracle Murphy, dog of the week. Full highlight reel tape coming to you guys here on the channel. Hopefully he can get it done here, get us back on track for the dog of the week, because it does need a miracle. That's why Lerone Murphy's going to be it this week.
I'm glad you don't trust those Bellator guys, because he was in PFL, so nah.
True. This is true. But what's the PFL done for me lately, huh? Name somebody that's come over from there that, my point still stands.
So Lerone Murphy to win, he's going to have to win in spectacular fashion, and I just don't know if he can do it.
Spinal. And that brings us to the main event. And if you're enjoying the content here, hit that like and subscribe button as we break down arguably one of the best fights that I've seen in months. This is a great fight, ladies and gentlemen. Dricus du Plessis taking on Khamzat Chimaev. And I'm going to pass this one over to you, Carlos. Who you got in this one?
I'm going with du Plessis in this one. Like we discussed earlier, if this fight is one round and it's all out for one round, I think Chimaev can win. The problem is if it's not one round, it's du Plessis. So yeah, I like Chimaev. I think he's awesome. I think his ability to wrestle is fantastic. I think his grappling ability is awesome. When it comes to striking, he's still very raw. He's lucky he's got some snap to it. He's got some heavy hands, so he can hurt you. But it's not the prettiest way. Like, his punches look technical, but what he does is not. It's kind of winging him out there. Dricus looks awkward in his striking, but there is a method to the madness, and there's a reason why he does it the way that he does, because he's there. And he has no rhythm to his striking, which is even worse because you don't know when that's coming, when that kick is coming, when that punch is coming, anything, when the knees are coming, or the takedown. So he's very unpredictable in that way. I just think that the longer the fight goes, obviously I think everyone's thinking this, the longer the fight goes, du Plessis is going to win. The shorter the fight, it's going to be Chimaev's favor. But I don't see a way this is going to end in the first round. Whether it's a knockout, I don't Dricus out with one shot. If it's a submission, we all forget too that Dricus doesn't start slow. He does start very quick as well. So if Chimaev comes out hot, du Plessis is waiting for him as well. So I don't see this ending early. If it does, fuck me, but I don't think it does. I'm going with Plessis for this one.
Yeah, this is a great fight. And Carlos and I did a video series earlier on in the year called Who Will Win, when we talk about all of these matchups that get announced. And I was on the DDP train, big fan of Dricus du Plessis. Obviously a very unorthodox style, great on Twitter, some of the best trash talk that you'll ever see. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go check it out. And people are talking about this matchup. This is one that obviously we've done breakdowns for in the past. And obviously DDP, a guy who, you know, people are very surprised by how he's been able to go on this title run and win the belt with his style. You know, people are saying in some fights, you know, DDP by banana peel, you know, DDP by whatever works. You know, the style is just something that people can't replicate in training, and they struggle to deal with. And when you talk about a guy like Khamzat Chimaev, the guy just comes through and just runs through people. So to me, this fight really just comes down to Khamzat Chimaev in round 1 or 2, or DDP takes over in round 3, 4, or 5. And when we did our earlier breakdown, I did pick DDP. The more that I've thought about it, I'm going to go with Khamzat Chimaev, man. I think that he gets this one done. I think the guy is undeniable. The guy is obviously somebody that he's just been an absolute well beater, and he's not somebody that I want to get in the way of. And I do think that obviously DDP can win this one if he can get out of the second round. You know, we've seen with Khamzat Chimaev, even in the Gilbert Burns fight, that he will slow down. He will struggle if he has to, you know, go back and forth in the striking. But I think he's competent enough in the striking here. I think he's probably the bigger fighter out of the two. And I think he cuts a decent amount of weight to get to 185. Obviously worked heavily on his conditioning, worked heavily on his wrestling, especially in his previous fights, going up and training with the Olympic Russian wrestling team. And I just think that this really just comes down to the fact that DDP is just going to be outmatched early in this fight. I know, Carlos, obviously you said that, you know, DDP does come out very aggressive early, but I do think that Khamzat Chimaev here is going to come out even more aggressive. DDP is going to get taken down here and ultimately beaten up. Khamzat is going to be able to control him on the ground, and I think we see an end to this reign here of Dricus du Plessis. We see an new here for Khamzat Chimaev. I think he gets the finish, and I'm not going to deny him here of that. But I do think that if this fight gets out of the third, I think there's a world where DDP wins this one and the tides do turn. But I'm going to go with Khamzat Chimaev just for a little bit of dissension. I think this is a 50-50 fight, but I like both guys. We'll see how this one plays out. But if you're enjoying the content, as always, hit that like and subscribe button as we let you guys know what's coming on the channel. We have the full card breakdown for the PFL World Tournament 9. We've already done that video. That video will be live to you soon on the channel. Check it out. And we have the dog of the week, my favorite betting underdog, Lerone, the Miracle Murphy. Full highlight reel tape this week. Check that one out. And as always, Carlos, what do you want to say to the people before we let them go?
Well, hope you guys enjoyed this. And number one, I can't believe that Lerone Murphy's the underdog in that. I was kind of scared you pick him as dog of the week, but number two, I would assume that Chimaev's the underdog in this as well.
He's the favorite.
Chimaev's the favorite? Oh, that's a bigger slap in the face. Well, anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the content, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Unbelievable.
Carlos is not happy about it, but one thing we are happy about
Such disrespect.
It is kind of crazy, some of those odds. I understand the odds a little bit, but Khamzat Chimaev has been a world beater up until this point. And if you're enjoying the content, as always, hit that like and subscribe button. We're always at 200 subscribers. We want you to be that one. Hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.